Well, welcome. I'm glad we're all here. Purpose of the meeting is to try and figure out how we're going to go forward with all the sort of input that we've received on the YouCut program. As you know, we are into our 6th week of the YouCut program. We've had over 1,100,000 votes. Been a phenomenal success. I know we're all hearing from constituents about sort of the straight up simple message that YouCut is about, and that is we got to stop the spending in Washington. As we've seen as late as today, the votes on the floor have all been bipartisan, as this project should be. Cutting the deficit is a bipartisan concern. It is about all America. And with those 1.1 million votes, we have now received over 75,000 suggestions via email about different ideas on how we're going to cut the deficit. And the purpose, I think, of our getting together today is to try and figure out how we proceed in July, how we're going to come up with the next round of YouCuts for each week that we're in session, so then we can bring those to a vote. With that, we'll have to take some of these suggestions. I know each of you have gotten some, and sort of look at them. We've got to get the cost estimate to understand how it is we're going to save the dollars. All the YouCut votes thus far have amounted to over $100 billion in savings. Obviously, we want to continue to amass a package of cuts that we can continue to push and hopefully gain some support so we get it passed. With that, if we want to first turn to Peter, I know that you were talking about an email that you had.
Yeah, there's I think a great idea. It comes from Tom Davis, and he says this. He says, cease your practice of printing out paper copies of every bill and amendment for members of Congress. Require each member to bring his or her laptop to each session and read the item prepared by the staff in a PDF. I mean, it's just great. I mean, here's the congressional record from June 28th. I challenge any person to tell me they've read the congressional record from June 28th. We know it's a complete fiction that anybody's read it. We're all wedded to our BlackBerries anyways, I think this is, a very, 3 cheers for Tom Davis and getting this onto the table. I think it's a great idea.
Some state legislatures have gone in that direction.
They do their budget, and right? We put our budget out on a DVD now instead. So
we all have laptops in Georgia, and it's estimated. I think that it costs over up to $100 million for printing and binding.
When you think of when we're in committee doing a markup, and they have to print 50 to 100 copies of every amendment they distribute, and some of them are only 1 line or 2 lines. They can do that electronically.
But then they keep changing the bill.
Yeah, that's right. Now, it doesn't take away the requirement that we read the bill.
Most important that we do read the bills.
But the printing nonsense. But I think this idea from Tom Davis is a great idea. $100 million.
Do we have any idea what that'd say?
We think 100 million, but I think it is sort of the purpose we've got to do is get the numbers down straight, so we understand exactly what the cost savings are going to be, and hopefully this can make it in the mix. We'll have to see again how we come up with those 5 options every week. But
because some of the costs are sort of intangible because it's efficiency as well, right? So a lot of these are good common sense ideas. It's not only cost, but it is efficiency, and time is money. It's savings.
No question.
Plus, if you're going to make these electronic, then they'd be available for all Americans.
Everybody could see them. Yes, a lot of antiquated processes that do need reforms.
That's what you'd do if it were your business.
Exactly. What a novel concept.
Having been a small business owner.
All right, well, that's good. We'll take that and ask for there to be some type of cost determination so we can then make a decision.
Eric, one other thing there too is we were talking about, and some of us from state legislatures, when we had laptops and could use laptops at our desk, we may want to look at what the cost would be for equipping each member with a laptop that could come to the floor, and seeing how that stacks up against the $97 million.
I was thinking about that too, because the one-time cost has got to be less than $97 million.
Absolutely.
You would think, maybe not.
Well, and then just think about the environmental impact, actually, of all of this paper and all of this churn and all of this burn that really not too many people read.
I think you'd end up saving a lot of money. Good. Lynn, you have some sense on the transportation issue, I think.
Well, there are
been a lot of emails on the highway funds and concerns about that. Just a couple to bring to everybody's attention. One from James Wood, who writes, using stimulus money on highway beautification programs instead of repairing and improving the roads themselves. He would like to see the use, go to actually improving roads, and echoed similar thoughts. Benjamin Buchanan writes at length, but the peanut here is, and he says, in my area, I have seen highway funds used for things not directly related to roads. How many bridge and road repair projects cannot be completed on the state level because there isn't enough funding? I just believe that by bringing the monies back to the local and state levels, there will be less waste. And I know that we all have had experience either at the state level. Certainly there's a role for the federal government in providing roads and bridges to our communities, but there is a lot of waste when you think about the gas monies coming in and what happens to those between when they roll in and when they get spent out. I've had a lot of complaints at home about monies going to the signs that say, paid for by the AAR.
One of our state legislators did a study and found that when the money leaves our state, goes to Washington, D.C., and comes back, it only spends like 85 cents. That middleman called the federal government takes out 15% of every dollar, and if it would just stay in our own state, we'd get a lot more value for that. And then the frustration when you see that money going to trails and some other things. You're paying your gas tax, and yet the money's going for some trail that, quite frankly, shouldn't be funded that way. So.
And in fact, the Federal Highway Administration is, together with the Federal Transit Administration, employ 3,000 people. Okay, that's a bureaucracy of 3,000 people, and cost $500 million a year. And that's that middleman that's basically costing Utahns 15 cents on every dollar to wash through.
Actually, this idea, this concept that this fellow has advanced has so many applications for so many federal programs, right? And I think that's one of the things the House Republicans are really focusing on this year. And so many of the different things that come to Washington, as you say, the administration, we just sort of suck it out of that, and then the states are disadvantaged in so many ways, whether that's a lot of education dollars, whether that's transportation dollars, things that really would be more efficient, more effective, and better for the citizens of that particular state if they didn't always have to come to the federal government first.
That's right, and those having that set aside for enhancements with those trails and bike paths and museums and projects like that. A lot of states don't want to put that money there. Our guys in Tennessee come in and say, look, just let us decide.
Exactly.
Rather than giving us that mandate, that federal mandate that again puts the stranglehold on, let us decide. We need bridges. We don't need to have more paths. We need bridges that are widened right now.
We've had some stimulus signs that have popped up in and around my district, and a county in my district put up on a website that about $3.5 million was being spent in our county on the stimulus. We did sort of a back of the napkin calculation on that and figured out the county that I represent primarily, along with Congresswoman Judy Biggert, we pay 0.54% of the federal tax load, okay? You start running the math on that, and you figure out this is about a 100-to-1 deal in terms of we're sending $100 for every one we're getting back. And I think on all of these transportation projects, you can run them a whole lot more efficiently.
And how much do you spend on the signs?
Yeah, that's right.
Well, I think it's one aspect of highway funding. Several of us are on the Transportation Committee. This is going to be an issue going forward because our trust fund is declining precipitously. Right. States can't make their match any longer. Right. So we've got to be more efficient with the dollars that we do have. And I think this is a great way to do it, not only to cut, but also to rearrange and be more efficient with the way we spend our dollars.
Really highlights the wonderful nature of the YouCut program, because what it's all about is priorities. And what Mr. Wood and Mr. Buchanan here said is that the priorities that they see coming out of Washington aren't the priorities that they would embrace. And so that's what they've done. I think it's a great idea.
So we've got to sort of nail down and into what the savings actually are about focusing the transportation monies on surface transportation itself and how to eliminate bureaucracy.
Right.
So we'll
I
do
think we ought to
that.
add on Jason's suggestion too, find out how much is going to the middleman.
Yeah. That's cool. Jason, you have,
Yeah, I have this one from Sarah Kelly that really caught my eye because she's worried about all these programs that duplicate another program in the federal government.
Mhm.
She wrote, look for overlapping programs. What is the total cost of welfare programs per individual? With the number of programs, I think you'll find that each person is receiving more than people who work. And she goes on and talks about just, they're so frustrating. We got a program that's set up to intended to help somebody, but then you find another program that overlaps.
Mhm.
And one of the highlights here is a Heritage Foundation report that came out recently. It said the federal government runs over 70 different means-tested anti-poverty programs that provide cash, food, housing, medical care, and social services to poor and low-income persons. And we can be compassionate, but when you have 70 different programs overlapping each other, imagine the waste and inefficiency. It's just inexcusable. We have to get rid of those.
you know, I think the first YouCut proposal, and winning proposal,
Mhm.
was one of these welfare programs that was created on the stimulus bill.
Yeah.
And my sense is the reason why this program was the winner was because they took out the work requirement.
Yeah.
And that was the reform that the people of this country demanded back in the 90s when the welfare program was reformed to begin with, and resulted in more people getting back to work. So that probably will save enormous amounts of taxpayer dollars.
I can tell you too, you're going to see a Government Accountability Office report come out probably right during this period on LIHEAP, the Low Income Energy Assistance Program, where it is going to blow the doors off of how ineffective and how fraudulent the program has become, where they're writing checks to convicts in prison to subsidize their energy costs. I mean,
And how much more money have they gotten since the stimulus?
it's unbelievable. And if we don't go in and drill down on every one of these programs in the government and eliminate that kind of waste and the inefficiency and the overlap that this person's suggesting, then we are failing the taxpayers.
Well, and back to Jason's point, you know, if we go in and just say, okay, we're going to streamline these programs and get rid of the bureaucracy.
And it's not that we shouldn't help those who
Just
need help.
Absolutely right.
But
70
if you're
different
if you're sending subsidies to people in prison for their energy costs, then you're not helping the people
Who
who are
truly
at
need it.
home,
Who
who
truly
need
need it.
help with their power bills in the
Absolutely.
winter.
Yeah.
And don't forget, the federal government's borrowing 43 cents on every dollar it's
Absolutely.
spending and
That's
wasting.
right.
And that bill goes to our grandkids and great-grandkids and probably into the next generation after that. It has to
It's gotta stop.
Over the next 10 years, this area of expenditure is $10.3 trillion. So, I mean, if we are even talking, 10% of waste on these programs, I mean, obviously it's something we gotta work on. I know that a lot of our members are working on these types of proposals, something I believe we ought to work to try and get a package of reforms ready. So that's good. Candace?
Yes, I have one, and you know I just absolutely love this YouCut program. I've been, like all of us, I think, been such a big supporter of this because I think it takes advantage of the inherent good common sense of the American people. And I have one that could have come out of my county because I think we have a lot of good common sense in Macomb County, Michigan. But here's one from Lonnie Seek. And they are saying, this is their idea, that we should place sunset clauses on all bills already on the books, or at least any newly passed legislation. Seems pretty simple and the smart and correct thing to do. And it is so unbelievably simple, but makes so much good common sense, because government it just grows itself. We pass a lot of legislation that is a wonderful concept under the dome here, and maybe it was 100 years ago, but it never ends. It just goes on infinitum in so many cases. And I think that this particular suggestion for YouCut is that we ought to take a look at plenty of legislation, federal legislation, that could certainly sunset, that it has an end, a finite end to it, and that it should be explored. And if it's a great program and it's serving its purpose, then just go ahead and pass it again. But if not, let it die off.
In 1948, I think it was, there used to be a committee that actually would look at and find places where things have achieved the goal they were supposed to and can be eliminated, much like a sunset commission. Right now, all we have are committees that find ways to spend.
Yes.
Add a program.
It is.
Yeah.
It's only a program. But if you created a program, it's like going back to the old, what was the tax in the 1812 war, all the different taxes you had that stayed around long past the
The
war.
telephone tax, Spanish
Right.
American War tax.
So if we're serious about finding accountability, this would be perfect along that line.
Yeah.
And if something is worthy, it would stay. And if something needed greater help, you'd find it then.
Absolutely.
But the accountability it would bring back would be perfect. It would make you argue or have the merit, so why should go forward?
Well, in our states that have balanced budget amendments, we have sunset clauses so that all of those programs, all of those agencies have to come back up for review and have to actually account. It's performance-based.
We got one here from Anthony Smith. Now, I represent a district, as you all know, out in Oregon. It's 70,000 square miles, and over 55% of it is federal land, and that's why this one caught my eye. Federal government owns millions of acres of land in the western United States. These lands are managed by two different agencies, Anthony writes. Bureau of Land Management, part of Interior, and the National Park Service, part of USDA. In many cases, properties managed by one agency have common borders with property managed by the other. It's more than just two agencies. You not only have the Bureau of Land Management, you have the Forest Service, you have the Park Service, you have Fish and Wildlife, you have, there is a whole host of agencies.
Then you get your state on top.
Oh, you get the state, and then you have all these overlapping rules and all. And we have tried over the years to get consolidation. And then in the West, you have this whole checkerboarding of federal land that was set up when the West was settled. So you'll have, literally, if you think of a checkerboard, this is federal, this is private, this is federal, this is, it is a mess to manage. The agencies will tell you that. And so if we could go in and get consolidation, not only in the landscape management business, but also in the agencies, but we could save a lot of money. We could save a lot of money.
Again, just another common sense idea coming from people who are impacted by federal action out there across the country.
You can just imagine what impact that has on the ranchers, on anyone that wants to try to do any
And the
development there, or someone that's even trying to do some conservation work out there, or whatever. They gotta go to their local agencies first, and then the state agent, probably the county, the local, county, and then the state, and then the federal
If
government.
you're trying to make an
Except
investment and you go through one agent and think you're already there, not the next, so you find it's going to take you 3-4 years, so you go do something else.
We have this going on right now in the wind energy development. So renewable energy on private land.
You can't get it
They
done.
want to do the wind energy, they can get all that done, but in order to get the line to run the power out into the grid, they have to cross about 10 acres of federal land in total sum. And that's where some people are trying to hold it all up. It's like, really, how do we meet our renewable energy goals? And it's not the windmills, they're on private land. It's literally the transmission line crosses federal land, so now it's been held up for a year. It's, I think, a $20 million investment. It's
But
huge.
the-
In a county, by the way, of 7,000 people, that's larger than the state of New Hampshire.
But if you can't get your return on investment enough time, they'll walk away.
They're gone.
I've got one, Eric, that I think can come from any place. And it's one of those that just frustrates you when you hear about it. This comes from Ron Hamilton. He says, cut all the silly college research programs that are given away to colleges to do various studies on the most ridiculous subjects. So here's an idea, that we make the National Science Foundation grants all online. Kind of what we first argued when it came to earmarks. Put everything online, let the sunshine in. Okay, if we put this all online and we enlisted the American public to look and help us do the comprehensive audits, you know what would happen? They'd think twice before they gave
That's
$52,000.
absolutely right.
Transparency.
Then the other thing that would ask, you saw it? Okay, you said you were going to do this. What were the results? What was the outcome? And how many of these grants have you gone before? Were probably done before. I mean, it's all borrowed.
There's a simple, exactly, the simple test should be, is it worth it to borrow 43 cents on every dollar?
Exactly.
And charge our kids and grandkids with the bill? That ought to be an underpinning
It is
of
a
every
cost
decision.
benefit for every expenditure of government. Is the return better to take the money out of the private sector, and are you earning bigger returns? Are you creating more jobs by having Washington spend it? That should be behind
But
every.
what's more, the greater argument here is from the standpoint, if we can't find one penny out of every dollar to eliminate, and we just talk around this room, you can't. But you watch that floor when you bring up a YouCut idea,
Oh.
they don't even wanna let it have a voice.
Right.
Because it's so strong, you can't defend that.
That's why
They
the
cannot
programs are-
defend spending this money.
We're gonna get the estimates and the amount of savings on all these ideas, and, you know, we'll need to draw up the specifics for each proposals, do the normal due diligence that we're about in this program. And I do think that we're gonna be able to include a number of these, as part of the YouCut proposal for July. So, thanks.
Excellent.
For all-
Great work.
Good work.
Thanks for all your,
Thank you.
Lots of
Thanks for
other
your
ideas
leadership.
out there.